Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. As we continue into April, today we are focusing on communities and the way we not only how different types of communities, but how we treat each other in those communities. There's an African proverb that says, "If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others." Today we speak deeper and in this discussion with a new guest. His name is Adam Gunton, is that correct? Oh,
Yes, sir.
all right. Thank
Adam
you,
V Gunton.
Adam V Gunton. Thank you so much for coming on and just sharing your insight with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I just want to say a disclaimer, especially in the beginning. If you are in crisis, please seek appropriate professional help immediately. 98 is a hotline now in the United States that you can call, but whatever community you're in, if you can ask the 3-word question, I need help. And whatever that is, whatever groups you feel comfortable with, whether it's a church, whether it's something else, I do encourage you to find those communities, find what resource. I don't like reinventing the wheel. Working in the field, I want to reach people where they're at. So again, thank you again, Adam, for coming on and sharing your insight. So I begin with quotes, and a lot of times I've been using proverbs, but one thing is from Burmese proverb, just to start us off. It says, "If you take big paces, you live big spaces." What comes to mind when you hear this quote in regards and anything you want to touch upon when it comes to communities and its importance when it comes to recovery?
Yeah, specifically on this proverb, what comes to mind right now, if you take big paces, you leave big spaces. And there's actually a lot coming to mind right now. What I'm hearing almost is like, if you focus too much on taking big leaps in life or looking for that one big thing that's going to change your life, without building that foundation with the small habits that you do every single day, you're gonna miss something. And Jesus talks about it, about having that foundation built on, rock instead of sand, because if it's built on sand, it's going to fall when the first thing comes. And I haven't been, I just started getting public about this. I don't think I've shared it on a podcast yet, but last year I was actually scammed. My nonprofit was scammed real bad for the whole year. And it was because I had this belief that this guy was getting me grants, giant grants, right, for this nonprofit, and I was so focused on this one big win that the whole year I didn't build that donor base of those small monthly donors. And now God showed me that I learned through the process, but I think people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can do in a year. By taking it one day at a time.
I think you hit on a lot of times we have this urgency that sometimes is not founded. When it comes to a lot of things, it's the micro decisions, like you mentioned before. Me getting up, me going and doing even the small micro decisions each and every day, communicating well with my wife, being able to flush out if something bothers me, talk about it, having those safe spaces, but also at the same time, things that are worth doing are hard. Let's just say that, it does take hard work, and sometimes we're driven by societal pressures. We don't actually take the time to be like, I want to be successful, but what does that mean today? What does that mean tomorrow? What does it mean a year from now? And sometimes, unfortunately, we could get caught up in the speed of it, or like the major, like you mentioned, like the major goals. Those goals are important, but also the little goals along the way, the little steps are as important, because you get to learn to ask the right questions. Why is this important for me? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Being in the faith realm, being a leader in church, a lot of times it's so complicated. You have someone who just beat a family member who just beat cancer, and then another person just lost someone from cancer a week ago. It's people are complicated. I don't like the notion that communities and how we connect with each other is simple. It's not. People are complicated. They have different contexts, but at the same time, it's worth it. You get connected with the right people. You may have made bad decisions. You may have made things that you wish you didn't do, but it's all learning from that experience. If that makes sense to you. Along those lines of what I've said and anything you want to piggyback or even mention more when it comes to this idea of rushing versus just taking the time. I do my best work when I slow down, to tell you the truth. It's hard for me to do it, but when I slow down, I do my best work. Any thoughts you want to mention regarding that?
Yeah, I'm someone that I definitely do things at a very fast pace.
Yeah.
I do things at a very, very rapid pace. I've, taken a company from 48,000 to 1.2 million in 9 months, but that's because when that opportunity hit for the prior year and a half, I had been every single morning in the Word, every single morning writing in my journal, every single day going to the gym, and all of these like micro habits, making my bed. These things, they seem like mundane, but if you actually build habits with yourself, with your self-care, and the way that you're going to continue building yourself into the person you're supposed to become, when the opportunity comes, you're ready to answer the call. And that's what God is constantly giving us, opportunities. And if our brain isn't ready to even see them, if we're not in communion with him, if we're not talking to him, when that opportunity comes, it's just going to look like, another person walking by. Yeah. It's just going to look like, just a random day. But if we build those habits and those small things that we do every single day, we're becoming the person that's ready at that moment.
Yeah, and when you mentioned that, it just reminds me, in America, they had Black History Month was not that long ago, and when we think about civil rights and not to just the idea of communities in the sense that it's not developed organically. A lot of people have mentioned this, the idea that it's developed intentionally. A lot of times it takes work to kind of understand and kind of build on those. And the hard work is something that, like you mentioning, you have to kind of refocus. You got the pacing is not the issue when you're doing in a way that you build these good habits that in time may seem, like you said, mundane, but it shapes the questions you start asking later on in life. It shapes and you're not scared of the questions. I think questions are sometimes the most telling. You mentioned, faith. I think one of the biggest questions. Everyone thinks about the Good Samaritan. They know about the story of the Good Samaritan. But one thing about the Good Samaritan people don't ask enough is, well, at least I don't hear, is the question that's asked. Who is my neighbor? That is the ultimate question. Because the guy is saying he understands that, we should treat each other well, but not those people, not them, because, of course, but I'm still, it's very important to appear, I guess, in the sense important. Sometimes is it more important to seem like you're doing well or actually doing well? These are kind of questions that you kind of ask yourself as you go on in this, in this life. So a lot of times we'll think of the Beatles. I think it was coined, and I'm paraphrasing, life happens when you're busy planning for other things. So it's in between, but at the same time, we're not excellent or amazing at everything, but we're also I used to kind of say that, I still say it, human beings are impressive and unimpressive at the same time. Like, we can't take ourselves way too seriously. I definitely have my strengths and I definitely have my blind spots, but there's something about the community that kind of bridges that divide when it comes to our humanity. Sometimes we're never enough, but when we're around positive communities, it can be very helpful. It's obviously now we're super connected, and there's always talk about how unconnected we are. We have every single way to connect to each other. And it's funny, when we got cell phones, I remember the day when there was still beepers, when we had cell phones, and you would talk. You had minutes, remember that? And then you had like you had a set amount of text, and then like, wow, at 9 o'clock you could talk as long as you want or something like that, those plans. But now we barely get a text. We barely do a text. We barely like keep up, and we have to be like what's on the screen. We have to be super intentional. One thing being a leader, I want to, after I say this, I want to hear your take. A lot of times there's a lot of emphasis of like, oh, how to progress this and that, especially if you're doing service with people, helping people. I sometimes say, and this sounds a little kind of coy, just call someone back. It's kind of funny to say that, but like a lot of times there's a lot of, you're speaking or you're talking or you're inspiring or whatever you're doing. Me working in the mental health field, you have to be intentional. A person's really having a good day, that's great, but every day is not the same. So follow up. I feel that that's one thing that is an intentional side when it comes to community. What comes to mind, or anything you want to add or share in regards to what we're talking about right now?
Yeah, I think there are actually three things that came up during this, and one of them, people that hear this can take it a lot of different ways, right? Because I actually think that it's more important to build your community by who you refuse to get around intentionally than who you choose to get around. I can tell you that there's certain qualities that I never see around me anymore. People don't gossip about other people around me because I intentionally made that choice that when I'm in a group of people and we're talking and stuff, if they start gossiping about somebody that isn't there, I turn and walk away. I don't have to say anything. I just turn and walk away. And what I've found is that by making a decision like that, and decision, it comes from a word that means to cut, like incision, to cut something out of your life. And I made the decision, I don't want to be around gossip because I read it in Proverbs.
Yeah.
It's like a choice morsel that goes to the deepest parts of your soul, right? And I'd never even told anybody I don't like gossip. And then people just didn't gossip around me. It was really, really interesting. And then also, negativity, someone with a negative mindset, someone that talks about negativity in a group of people is more contagious than a cold in an enclosed space.
Yeah.
A mindset somebody has is more contagious than an infectious disease. And if that's the case, then why am I going to be around anybody talking negative? So, and that doesn't mean I need to beat somebody up or say anything about it. I just choose to walk away, or I choose to speak positively. And then what I found is the people that I spend time with, I've watched as they are just positive people. It's really hard to be negative around a bunch of positive people. It's hard to, and then you have people to reach out to. And then something that, when you're talking about, calling people back, reaching out, something you can intentionally do to grow your community, and especially like add positivity into it. I call it compliment texting. Intentionally sitting down with your phone for a few minutes a day and just go through your contacts. You can go really quick and then find someone and then text them something that you really like about them. Hey, I just, wanted to tell you, I was thinking about you this morning, and, I really love the way that you intentionally make people feel around you. I love how you show up in a room, or you show up at, in a restaurant the other night when we had dinner with that group. The way that you were talking to people really lifted them up. I really like how you do that. And if you're intentionally and consciously complimenting the people around you, those qualities are actually going to manifest more and more in those people, because people want to have that reward of a compliment. And it's subconscious, but if you compliment people about the qualities you love about them, those qualities will show up more. So it is intentional.
Yeah. And I do like, a lot of times people will say, well, I want to help. I want to be, I want to connect or whatever. It's just the idea of just being kind to someone. It's so simple. Sometimes you go to you go to a restaurant and the first thing you get your order wrong, and I feel for those waiters, those people, servers, because it's a grind, for those people. And you had a hard day of work, and you're like, I have no time to help or volunteer. Let's just say you have one of those really high demand jobs. Well, just the person gets your order wrong. I kind of encourage the fact to be kind to that person. The kindness, kind of like you said, is kind of contagious. Like if you don't feel you have time, be kind to the people around you. Be intentional and be kind. A lot of times we just assume that, oh yeah, he's great at this. He doesn't know, or he or she doesn't know that people think that way. That's really hard. It's a lot of times assumed, oh yeah, he's great at the piano, or he's great at singing, or he's great at this. Well, did anyone tell him? Her? They don't. So a lot of times we're like, oh, they must know. Really? I don't think that's really how it is. And I think it's even more so not the way it is. I think what you're mentioning, going through like what contact lists and just saying, what do I really, I really appreciate this about you. And there's always something, really think about it. A lot of times, even the ones who, like we're planning, they're making this such a big deal for us to plan to go to a restaurant. But you appreciate them because they get all of us together. They get us all together. Like, it's nothing my quality I would like, but at the same time, I like that. And also what you mentioned about being around people, I think being around people, having those boundaries are very important. But also, for me, what I find personally is, even if someone has an opposing idea for me or something that they don't agree with or something, I find it helpful for me to be around them, understand why they don't agree, and honestly, it helps me kind of understand better. I may still feel the same way, but I learn and I can actually connect with that person a little much better, because the people come from different walks of life, different contexts, different values. It doesn't mean that their value or my value is more important. I think when I was in school, I don't know if you read like Tom Sawyer, Huckleberry Finn, but Mark Twain says kindness is a language which deaf can hear and the blind can see. There's something about it. You don't really have to like, oh, he or she's being kind. The body language, the approach, the intentionality. Oh, I'm just calling to check up on you, and you didn't seem that you did seem a little down today when we were out for lunch. Just that extra, and it's not to be like, oh, I'm doing this to. No, you do it when it comes naturally. That's where I feel communities can really germinate. They can really kind of grow, because it's not wasted motion. It's nothing that, oh, I have to do this or for this. It's not a give or take. It's just the give, and at the same time you receive in that regards. Anything you want to mention about this quote, or anything that we've already so far talked about?
Yeah, I think it's a great question to pose to yourself, of who do I want to be and how do I want to show up for others? And if you can answer that, and I'm going to tell you a story that is not this is probably 6 months ago. I had changed my bank account or something with my business, and for some reason missed an email on a credit card, and I missed a payment, and I was upset because it was the first time I've missed a payment in forever or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was on the phone with Bank of America, and I heard myself, I'll just say, not being kind to this person on the other side of the phone representing Bank of America. And it was really interesting because I had this realization that this is not how I want to show up for others. And in that moment, what I did was I stopped the conversation, and I apologized and said, you are not Bank of America. I apologize for the way that I've been showing up in this conversation. You didn't deserve that. This had nothing to do with you. And then I changed my behavior. And there's been a couple other times since then that I've been on a call with customer service where I could show up upset, 100%. I was charged 4 months for insurance that I had canceled 4 months before when my car was totaled, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing was that because I corrected my behavior in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
I showed up in those calls positively.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because that first one, right, the way that I corrected my behavior in that, I felt as if her day changed.
Yeah.
Because other people were treating her like that.
Yeah.
And how do I want to show up? How do you want to show up?
Mm-hmm.
Listeners to this right now, who do you want to be for the community around you?
Mm-hmm.
Not just your friends, not just your family, but the person that serves you coffee, or the person at the restaurant, or the customer service person on the other side of the phone that we have no idea what they're going through right now. Mm-hmm. Everybody has such an interesting and unique path in life. Who do we want to be if they're the one that's beaten up on the side of the road and we're the Samaritan walking by? How do we want to show up for them?
Yeah. I think, a lot of times asking the right questions can really help dive deeper when it comes to these. And I think it's always important to dive deeper. And I kind of, for me, it's not, a lot of times older train of thought is like, emotions are not always accurate. True. You shouldn't live your life by your emotions. You shouldn't make choices or big decisions just purely by emotions. However, maybe because of the work I do, but emotions are still important. If I feel like
I make a lot of decisions on emotions.
Yeah, but it's certain
I'm still
things.
Learning.
Yeah, and I feel like it's important to recognize. Let's say one of my friends really get me mad, so I'm upset. I'm having the same kind of conversation you had with Bank of America representative, and then let's say I was able to kind of change my tone and say, I'm sorry, and I feel that it improved. But what I do, at least I try to do, is ask myself why it happened. Why was this so important? Why was it so important for me to say it this way? And the funny thing about emotions is I could be totally incorrect. And let's say I had false information, but it mattered to me and spiked my emotions that much. I feel that can be more telling of what's going on. Maybe something that you need to flush out. Maybe something you need to work on. Emotions are useful when you know what it is. Was there for it kind of indicates what's going on inside and may actually help you kind of navigate. But the problem with the old model is emotions, if they're incorrect, then they're incorrect. Well, I don't really buy that. I think emotions are incorrect maybe on the external, but in the internal, it's you feel angry, you feel sad, you feel alone. You can be around thousands of people, feel alone. So who's to say that's not real? It's real to the person who's struggling with it. Now, is there effective ways that that person may take? Yes. If the person had this pervasive, very negative thought, maybe they need to get help. Maybe they go to recovery, need to get support. Maybe they ask that question, I need help. But at the same time, emotions in itself, even though it's incorrect, it still matters. Like in a factual sense. Like if I feel like I'm complete dog crap or whatever, and everyone says, no, Rob, you're great, but it keeps being pervasive, there's something I need to kind of work on of why I feel this way. I want to ask you, kind of switching gears, what helped you find the community you are in today? Obviously, you built your community, you have this, all you do, but I want to also say, what helped you get there, and what characteristics of that community helped you stay? Like, what is important when it comes to, if you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I actually wrote an article about this that I kind of try to keep my time with others around this spiritual law that I believe of the law of 33%. So basically, 33% of my time needs to be where I'm leading and helping people get from where I used to be to a point, like if I need to be helping addicts or need to be doing things with Recovered on Purpose specifically to help addicts, right? And then 33% of my time needs to be just with friends, like people that we're not trying to teach each other necessarily, or not one of us not's the leader. We're just friends hanging out, growing together, able to just like be, right?
Yeah.
And then 33% of my time has to be with people that I am submitted to. I have men in my life that I am submitted to. I'm not there to teach them anything. They are there to teach me and help me become the man that I am supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
I get around men that are successful in business that there's nothing I can teach them about business, you know. They are there in my life to absorb that. And I have another mentor that, you know, he has a mastermind called Standard 59, and Josh helps me live the standard of Jesus, like, because that's something that I want to live up to. And also, you know, he's a really great father and husband. I'm single. I want to have a wife. I want to have a family. If I want those things, I can't only be learning from single men, right? I've got to learn what it takes to have a successful marriage and be a successful father, you know? And I think it's good to, you know, and when I say these things, that doesn't mean that I'm like categorizing people in my life. It's just being intentional with, you know, who you're spending time with and what you're learning from them. And then I don't always want to be relating to people only because of my past. And I say that because of the specific work that I do in addiction recovery. You know, I go to different meetings and things and get around people in recovery, but I don't really spend a whole lot of time outside of there, because just because we're addicts doesn't mean we need to be friends. We can be a support community without only getting along because of that. I want to play paddle tennis. I want to play pickleball. I want to play basketball and work out and go on a trail run. Not everybody wants to do that stuff, you know? I want to build businesses. I want to write books. Not everybody wants to do that stuff.
Yeah, and I feel that, you know, recognize and identify communities in your life I find that helpful in regards to boundaries. Like if you have someone who, you know, is great support in certain areas, you know, it's kind of, it will be, how can I say, ineffective if you're expecting something else from that relationship. And at the same time, it also helps you effectively navigate boundaries. And I keep saying boundaries because it's important, because the burnout is there. You could help yourself, you can help everyone else besides yourself, but you don't want to get there. But at the same time, it's wonderful work for me. You know, I experienced with I have mental health issues for a long time, and I understand just how it feels to be so devalued for a while with labels and all that stuff. So for me, it's more about, I think this quote kind of says it. Communication is merely exchange of information, but connection is exchange of our humanity. A lot of times I'll talk to people, and you probably can relate to this, and I have nothing to give them. Like literally, I'm trying to help them. Literally, resources may be tight, or there's a situation that's very difficult or complex, but I hear them. I talk with them. I listen to them. And you know, the funny thing is, they feel better because they don't get hurt a lot. And you hear this a lot. They don't get hurt. They don't have the ability, because everything's become so tangible. I need to get this to get that. I need to get this and to get there to be happy. But the fact is, sometimes we forget the human part of it. I always like that notion of you treat the person first, then you treat what they're going through. You work with the person first. You don't work the problem first, then the person. Each person is different, and I feel that has been more effective. And I feel, I feel the experience is more enriching. So I feel that has been, at least for me, going back to the question I asked you, that has been important for me when it comes to help me to find the community I'm in. You know, I have people, you know, there's seasons in life. You have friends, and then you have friends that, you know, you're still hope the best for, but at the same time, I don't want to stay in the community that, you know, where I was really struggling. At the same time, we have that support, but I also have my own interests, and it's just because we are still people. Like I don't like the idea that I'm, I lose my identity because of a diagnosis. And the diagnosis helps you get maybe some of the treatment or some of the things that you may need, but along the way, I'm still Robert. you're
Yeah.
still, you're
100%.
still, you get what I'm saying? So
100%. And I was actually just talking to a sponsee about this because I do 12-step work, right? And not associated necessarily with any fellowship, but I do 12-step work because it works. And if somebody comes in and tells me that they have a mental health diagnosis, right? And that might come up in the work and things like that. Say, well, I'm not a therapist and I'm not a medical professional, so don't bring it up again and let's do this work. I don't see that in you, and I'm not going to let you identify as that in our conversations, because we are doing work that works. And these identities and these societal, things that they put on us, that's not your name.
Yeah.
That's not your name. Your name is not a diagnosis. I am not, dude, I can't remember the last time I said, I'm not an addict.
Yeah.
I'm a recovered addict if I ever identify with it, because I am. I'm a child of God. I'm somebody that is out to make a difference in the people around me. So, and it's also very easy for us to talk about this right here, on a podcast about how, these diagnoses that we've had and these identities that we've had, we just let them go, right? Bro, we all struggle.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about working on ourselves, working within a community that is positive and building these good family type communities around us, is that the amount of time between those hard times, can get longer and longer and longer.
Yeah.
You can build, it doesn't matter what your diagnosis is. It doesn't matter what you've been through. I've heard, I don't want to say it all because then I'll get shocked, but I've heard a lot of the hardest things and watched people transform and watched them, get married. They were homeless and shooting up dope 2 years ago. And now they've got a business, a wife, and a kid. What? How is that possible? And it's because God has an identity for you. If you're listening to this right now, God has a new identity for you, and your life is about to change. I don't know why that just came out, but somebody listening to this, your life is about to change. You're holding on to an identity that is not you, and God has a new one for you. And I'm hearing power. There's a new power coming into your life. Woo! Somebody listening to this is hearing it, bro.
There's a person named Kurt. I always butcher the last name, so I'll just Kurt. He says it this way. I love what he says here. He says, what should young people do with their lives? Many things, obviously, but the most daring thing is to create stable communities in which terrible disease of loneliness can be cured. I think a lot of times we kind of look loneliness as kind of how you say, weakness. I think there's some connection that sometimes society puts to loneliness as being, but I a lot of times if we're stuck and we feel like we have no community and we feel lonely. There's a difference from being alone and having your time and having that time to kind of reflect. But if you feel like you're absolutely lonely, that no one is there for you, no support's there, no, you're worth nothing, that for one is a terrible place to be. And for me, I think this quote kind of says it. And it's interesting because we went through COVID, and one thing I've noticed when we went through COVID was just how like the little conversations used to bother me not having anymore. Like just going to the store and just having that little talk with a cashier. I just remember those moments that I felt like I had to rush through, wearing the mask, all this stuff. And it's not a debate of whether this or that is not a political debate. It just felt different. It felt disconnected. You have to really kind of try. And for me, I just feel when it comes to young people, it's so different because I saw the transition from home phones to beepers, like I mentioned before, 2 cell phones, the Nokia bricks that we used to have, and then
And Snake.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then now we have all these smartphones, and if it's like because we have this saturation of abilities to connect, it's kind of like we don't appreciate it or don't appreciate the connection there as much. But as at the same time, I do want to give you an opportunity because you're a new guest. I like to just give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, okay? And Adam, and just just segueing before kind of wrap up this topic. But I like whatever you feel comfortable with to share a little bit what brought you where you are, and anything else. And I know you wrote a book, and stuff like that. And if I'll put all the plugs in the notes so people can click and find out more. But the stage is yours. Just whatever you want to share in regards to community or just regards to what's going on with you, anything like that.
Cool. Yeah. I 6.5 years ago, I was homeless, 148 pounds, and addicted to IV drugs. I was actually kicked out of the homeless shelter, so I was super homeless. And and right now I'm like 220 pounds, so I was super underweight. I was close to death. A lot of people, actually millions of people have seen a video of my overdose where the police found me, not breathing, no pulse, behind the wheel of a car. And, the transformation that happened from then till now is a miracle. It's not a special miracle that is special to me. I believe that each of us has the opportunity to live a miracle like this, but I see them every day. And that's what the real miracle is that I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. I am in a position to witness miracles and other people's lives change. And I feel really blessed for that because I found recovery on November 6, 2017. 5 days later, I met Jesus face to face at IHOP, International House of Pancakes, while I was eating French toast. And, on day 30, it was my first time ever having 30 days. So I quit smoking cigarettes and, haven't had a drag with cigarettes since then. And then on my 2 years clean and sober, I published my book, From Chains to Saved. It went pretty viral and became a bestseller. And then people started messaging me and, had found recovery through it. So I started coaching and training other people to write books. Now we've, published dozens of books about recovery stories, helping addicts. We have a 50-state resource guide specifically for underprivileged addicts and alcoholics that don't have insurance or finances for treatment. We'll help you get Medicaid. We'll help you get connected with all the resources in your area, nonprofits, that kind of stuff, because there's no shortage of resources anymore. If you're struggling with addiction, we have resources for you. I was able to give my TED Talk that came out 2 months ago, and it's starting to pick up a lot of views, pick up a lot of steam. I'm starting to get messages and things. And the thing is the whole idea is that every single person that overcomes something has a story. And with that story comes a power and a responsibility. If you have overcome mental health or addiction or, something in your life that you had to struggle through and you made it to the other side, there is somebody out there right now that will struggle to overcome the same battle until they meet you or hear your story. And, that's what I believe. My shirt says my story ain't over, because all of these things, it's like, as long as I stay connected with God and do what he says on a daily basis, I'm going to have the opportunity to be in a position to watch miracles the rest of my life in other people's lives. And I feel incredibly blessed for that. recoveredonpurpose.org. We have a bunch of resources there. I post blogs and vlogs and articles on my YouTube, and then Facebook, Recovered on Purpose, as well, if you want like memes and reels and positive stuff to enjoy the day. So that's about it.
Yeah. So those who are listening, those plugs will be right underneath. Just look at the notes and you'll be able to go and find out more on all the great work you're doing, Adam. I just want to say that I do commend you. It is never, a lot of times I remember starting this podcast, I used to do it before. I was just doing things locally where I was at, with churches, just kind of having people share their story. And I just remember one of my friends said, why don't you do a podcast? I'm like, why would I do a podcast? It was funny because it's so dated, because 2019, before December. That's when I first had my first episode. And I said to myself, I said, I'll try this. And it's been amazing. Especially I didn't know COVID was happening. It allowed me to continue my work and continue to connect. And the one thing that I feel that is always, my recovery, helping others became my recovery.
Yes.
So that idea is what I feel inspired what I'm doing and what I'm even doing in my professional life. I just for me, a lot of times you see like maybe a really hard case or whatever the case may be. All I see is a hurt person who's sad, person who needs help. And that's usually the thing. I think communities can be that avenue, that first bridge, that first instant. The person was kind to me. It went to you go to, maybe you're really struggling. You're struggling with addiction, or you're struggling with mental health, and you're working at a restaurant. We mentioned that in the beginning, and then you messed up someone's order, and someone was just kind to you, and that made your day because you've been having a rough time. So I just think that's really where I found, I guess where I found my bridge and like my passion. I want to ask you as we kind of wrap up. Let me see here. Let's just do this one. What has been the biggest lesson you learned or are learning when it comes to the importance of a community? And anything you want to share with those who are listening about this?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that we were created for community.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that each of us has a part within a huge whole. Every single one of us, we've each been given special and unique gifts, special and unique purposes that only are able to be fulfilled within a community. Because what gifts can you have to give to yourself? Your gifts are specifically tailored to you, created within you to give to the world and to give to community. And without you, there's a piece missing.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to know that you are important. You're important. The world is a community. And there's people out there that you haven't even met yet that you're going to change their life.
Yeah. And I think with in regards to when you're talking about community and how we're connected, I do feel the one worry, and I'll just say this as kind of as a response. We as humans have this incredible ability to be resilient, but also we could have this incredible ability to do without. And one thing I worry about that is like, I don't know about you, Adam, but like if I stop connecting with my friends or I stop connecting with people, the problem is it gets normalized. We need that connection. So 1 week, 2 months, maybe I had a falling out with my friend. Instead of reconciliation or just talking with them, I just cut them off. Now, I'm talking about in this as an illustration. We have an amazing ability to do without, but that's not always healthy. Community is one of those things that are not healthy to do without. That's what I'm trying to say. We have this amazing ability to be hermits. It's okay to have those times alone. I'm not saying not to. Defining boundaries, that's one thing. But the problem sometimes is when we limit our interactions, our connections, and that absence kind of feels like a loss. If you think about anything, when people who lost loved ones or people who passed away in your life, when you lose a friendship or a relationship that's very close, it kind of feels, at least at the very beginning, that way. And because that person's no longer part of your life in that regard. So I would say when it comes to community, a lot of times human beings have the ability to get used to a lot of harsh conditions, but let's, at least I encourage that community not be on the list of things you scratch out. Community is something
Right.
that you need to intentionally find and work and cultivate. It's something that maybe the community is negative. Maybe it's something that you may have to start setting boundaries and maybe find people that are more positive, just as Adam was saying. As we wrap up, any final thoughts as we kind of wrap up this? It's so great to have you, Adam, on the podcast, by the way.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. I appreciate you having me. And yeah, I keep feeling like there's somebody hearing this that needed it. And I don't say that's not like a general thing that I do on podcasts, but like I actually sense that there's somebody that there's something about to change in your life. You're listening to this right now, and there is something major about to change in your life. A new identity, a new decision you're making. There's some kind of new power about to hit in your life. And this message was for you.
Yeah. I just want to say, at the very least, and a lot of times we can't see, like, I think it's Martin Luther King said this, just because you can't see the whole staircase doesn't mean you don't take the first step. So sometimes all you can do is just one thing. So just do one step at a time. At the same time, reach out to your connections, reach out to your support. One thing is, we're very proud. It's harder for adults sometimes to ask for help when you need it, but then at the end of the day, find that community that you feel safe enough that you can. I'm not assuming it's gonna be hard work, but at the same time, when you could look at yourself, I guess, in a way that you can find that you are valuable enough that it's worth it, because you are. I was just saying that right now. A lot of us, thinking about community, I think it is very much needed. And thanks again, Adam, for sharing your insight and just being on the conversation. The thing is, this is not complete answers, because life continues. That's the one thing one of my friends said. Well, think about life, it's always unfinished if you really think about it. If you allow yourself the acceptance of that, things get a little bit easier in the sense of the urgency. You do what's important to you, find out what values, get connected to positive communities. Those kind of things can help you. So again, thank you so much, Adam. I want to share with those who are listening, remember to stay updated with Revive Ministry through the various platforms. ReviveMinistryFL.com is our website. This is goodbye from Revive Ministry Podcast, leaving his last words of wisdom. It's a Czech proverb. It says, do not protect yourself by fences, but rather by your friends, your communities. Lean on them. Thank you so much, Adam, for being on.
Thank you.